In this video, I'd like to talk about Anthony Joseph Noto, the current standing CEO of SoFi Technologies and one of the greatest CEOs in current times. However, not as well known as the likes of a Jamie Dimon or an Elon Musk. Now, aside from telling you that he was born in Poughkeepsie, New York in 1968, I'm going to mainly stay away from his childhood and relationships throughout this video and focus mainly on his climb in the corporate ladder. And so the story begins in 1991. Where Anthony Noto had just finished up his chemical engineering major, graduating as the #1 graduate and an All-East, All-American football linebacker. He graduated from the United States Military Academy of West Point, where he also entered into the U.S. Army Rangers. Throughout his 4-year stint in the military, Anthony became a communications officer and actually rose to the rank of captain. This is where he learned all about the internet protocol, and digital networks. He eventually discharged from the military in 1995, where he is quoted in saying, "For me, it wasn't all about being in the military. Serving in the military was the price I was willing to pay for the lessons I'd learned along the way." Lessons that he'd say was leading a team into the toughest of circumstances. Sleep deprived, stressed, low motivation, while also getting the job done. Noto's first real job in the corporate world actually began in Kraft Foods, where he'd actually be an assistant brand manager for the first 2 years working there, where he would work on companies that had to do with Kraft's salad dressings. He took a real shine and expertise to the new product developments at Kraft, where Kraft noticed this. They promoted him to a brand manager to help actually promote new products in the post-cereal side of Kraft Foods. He had to look at it mainly from an entrepreneurial side. Now that he's a fully fledged brand manager, also led him into the financial side of the business. But this wasn't enough for Anthony. His quest for victory was not finished in the cereal aisle, and so he went to Kraft Foods with an offer to increase his expertise by letting him go to business school. They loved it. This worked wonders. He got accepted into the executive MBA program at Wharton School of Business at University of Pennsylvania. At this point, Anthony was 29 years old, but the average age of the people attending this executive program were in their late 30s. This allowed him to network with people that were much smarter than him. Through this networking, he knew that his love for finance would actually lead him down a different path, and so they convinced him to look more towards Wall Street. And so it was. Anthony Noto actually started to do so. He got his first break whenever Lehman Brothers offered him an equity research position that focused on retail analysis. But let's remember the timeline. This is retail in 1998, right whenever the internet was completely commercializing and absolutely taking off. This is where he actually switched job opportunities to be an electronic retail analyst at Goldman Sachs in 1999. This, in my opinion, is the absolute turning point for Anthony Noto and what faced his largest challenges, but also his largest opportunities. Now, if you're paying attention to the timeline, you'll realize that being an analyst for the internet sector in 1999 was obviously going to come with some very big ups and downs. Anthony was able to find some amazing buy ratings that really shot him up in popularity in the Goldman Sachs arena. Companies like Amazon, eBay, Priceline, Expedia, and Yahoo. Companies that would go on to do amazing things. But obviously, with all the fun of this great internet era, came the harsh reality of the 2001 internet bubble. Anthony Noto, like many other analysts, did not see this coming, and his unwavered optimism for the internet caught him in some very hot water. Like whenever he was toting analyst buy predictions on companies like HomeStore, Asper.com, eToys, Webvan, and even Planet RX, which, if you guys know any of those names, were not good at all ending in large bankruptcies. Large publications like CNBC were toting him with terrible nicknames like Anthony Don't Know. You really can't make this up. Even people in his own department are cited as calling him this during this time. Anthony Noto's even managing director said Anthony Noto's great, but he has some major flaws. This is the exact quote. He said, "Anthony has an upbeat spin no matter what the news," and added that while supporting our issuing clients is obviously helpful, in these types of markets, it tends to undermine Goldman Sachs' credibility. It was an extremely tough time for a lot of internet analysts. Most of them even switched their careers, but not Anthony. Anthony stuck around for 9 grueling years, where for the beginning part, yes, there were some problems, but he actually put his head down and got right back to work. he actually increased his workload from not only just covering internet sector, but also getting into entertainment, satellite, and cable industries as well. Anthony Noto even regained a lot of his reputation by gaining over annualized earnings of over 23% throughout 2001 and 2004. Anthony Noto was even awarded the coveted #1 ranking in Institutional Investor magazine yearly investor poll in 2003 to 2007 for his coverage of the internet sector. During this same time, he was even in podium positions in other sectors like entertainment for his amazing buy rankings for Disney and some of the best years that Disney has ever seen. Not only this, Anthony also received the greatest gift of all during this time. In 2004, he got Goldman Sachs partnership. He was only there for about 5 years at this point, by far the youngest member of any Goldman Sachs member in 2004 to receive this reward. To make this an even more spectacular accomplishment, out of the 99 people that were gifted this in 2004, only 3 of them were market analysts, one of them being Anthony Noto. Reports show that he was making likely about $4 to $5 million in bonuses during this time for his performance. He ended his career on Wall Street for that time in 2007, marked as the most effective analyst in all of Wall Street. And although I believe that Anthony Noto absolutely loved this job and was one of the very few people that could actually take the high workloads and high stress environments, he couldn't help but take the high praise of this next job opportunity that he was offered. In 2008, Anthony Noto joined as the Executive Vice President and Chief Financial Officer of the NFL. Noto, while just being at the NFL for a short 2 years, had helped redo media deals, labor deals, and even stadium deals for the NFL, while also redoing their entire financial foundation, was also heavily cited as being the person that had instituted a need for financial stress tests for all 32 clubs at the NFL. Some accounts at this time say that he was making roughly about $850,000 in salary during this time. Now, this is just my belief, but I think after 2 years, the high praise started to wear off at the NFL, and Noto realized that the challenge just wasn't all that challenging, and so he looked for even better. This is where Goldman comes back into the mix. Goldman Sachs had found an opportunity to bring Anthony Noto back with a very esteemed, highly prestigious banker named George Lee. They would co-head lead a team called the TMT Group. Now, this could be complete conspiracy, and I mean, maybe it's coincidence, maybe it's by a complete intent, okay? But the 2 years that Anthony Noto left to go to the NFL might have been some of the most disastrous years in all of markets. During the 2008 financial crisis, Anthony Noto avoided being an analyst for those 2 terrible years to come back into being in a much larger and more prestigious spot at Goldman Sachs for some of the greatest years to come in 2010. Anthony Noto was touted at this time as being relentless, someone that wouldn't take no for an answer. Executives at Goldman are even quoted as saying that Anthony Noto would work harder than anyone at acquiring new clients and then work his ass off to keep them happy, essentially doing whatever it takes to get the job done. All these client winnings and overachieving had led them to a great accomplishment, achieving the lead underwriting role for Twitter's IPO in 2013. By mid-2014, Anthony Noto had had a change in plans. He was going to join a hedge fund called Couture Management, where even Goldman Sachs had put out a memo saying that they appreciate Anthony Noto's time at Goldman Sachs and they wish him well at Couture. However, what they didn't know, on the back, brewing very quietly, that I guess Anthony Noto and Jack Dorsey had a closer relationship during that IPO of Twitter than people originally thought. And just before Anthony Noto was going to pack his bags and go to Couture, Twitter announces that Anthony Noto will be the next chief financial officer. Now, why make the jump to Twitter instead of being in a hedge fund? Obviously, there's maybe a lot more money than what his reported salary of only $250,000 annually at Twitter was going to be. Oh, and the $64 million of Twitter shares that he was also granted for being the CFO. 1.5 million shares. To make Anthony's list of accomplishments even better, in November of 2016, not only were they very happy for Anthony Noto to be the CFO, they also needed him to step in to also act as the chief operations officer at Twitter, So between this time, he was not only the CFO, but also the COO at Twitter. In August of 2017, Anthony Noto actually stepped away from the CFO position and actually go full-time into being the Chief Operations Officer until February of 2018. On the other side of Silicon Valley, completely separate from Twitter and Anthony Noto, Mike Cagney, the founder and current CEO of SoFi Technologies, abruptly resigns under mounting rumors of sexual harassment and creating a frat-like workplace for people to work at. This caused them to go rushing for new management, but they didn't want to go internal for this because obviously that frat-like terrible work culture needed to be reinvented. And so they went externally, looking for someone new that could bring maturity and professionalism to the workplace. Anthony Noto heard of this and took on his largest challenge yet, applying for and eventually becoming the now current CEO of SoFi Technologies. He wasn't even really the mature CEO that they necessarily wanted. He didn't have any CEO experience previously, having been equity-focused, banking-focused, service-focused, internet-focused, social-focused, mobile-focused were all key learning experiences that Anthony Noto needed to lead this company into the great successes that it's seen into the future. Anthony himself attributes the likes of seeing companies like Amazon, what they did to retail, Expedia, what they did to travel, and Netflix, what they did to media, showing that the consumer is hungry for innovation and that they want better than what they have today. SoFi, having been a very fast-growing financial services company, had the opportunity to do this that no other company has, gaining over $2.3 billion in private capital. It could be the one business to do this amazing accomplishment, and Anthony Noto, with his very unique background, being the only CEO to have pulled this off. Under Anthony Noto's leadership, it is said that the company's culture has been completely fixed and that the company's goal of going after quantity of loans rather than quality has been completely turned around, and that SoFi's goal is to get the best loans possible and to grow the healthiest but yet fast-growing financial institution that has ever been seen. Anthony Noto's goal is to be a top 10 financial institution, and he believes that it's not an if, but when that's going to happen.